Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, we're going to be talking about LIT Videobooks. This is a new, innovative way of consuming incredible content. And with me today is the CEO and founder. His name is Ronak Sheth. Welcome to the show, Ronak.
Thank you. Yeah, excited to chat more.
Okay, so before we get into what LIT Videobooks does, let me first ask you, in your opinion, what are three things that every entrepreneur needs to know?
Ooh. Grit, I would say first. Humility and adaptability.
And so this is your first venture. I think you had mentioned before we hit the record button that you have been at this now for a little over 2 years, almost 3 years. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Almost 3 years.
So give me an example of one of these three things. So the grit, the humility. What is a good example of what you had to face into that yourself in the last 3 years?
I would say, in terms of grit, I mean, as a first-time founder, and it's a VC-backed business. As a first-time founder raising VC funding, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into, right? You hear no probably dozens, if not, 50 or 60 times before you hear your first yes, right? And if I look back, I can say, okay, well, you know what? That's just how the game is, right? You need one believer and then everyone else will kind of not necessarily follow, but once you have one person that says yes and believes in it that everyone else likes, they kind of follow to some extent, right? And so I think in terms of the grit part is doesn't matter if you hear no hundreds of times, whether it's from investors, prospects, people that you want to hire, right? Just to kind of stay steadfast and have the belief in your mission, and you'll figure it out.
Yeah, completely. Well, now tell me a little bit about Lit Video Books. What is it that you guys are doing there, and what was the purpose, or what problem is it that you're trying to solve with the venture?
Absolutely, yeah. So lit video books. Video books are a new category, and our goal and our mission is to make reading as easy and accessible and engaging and fun as watching a movie. And we really want to make books accessible to as many people as possible. We're in this kind of world where over 100 million Americans haven't bought or read a nonfiction book in the last year. Yet, I don't know if you believe these polls, but Nielsen says we watch about 5 hours of TV a day, right?
Yeah.
And the younger generation is kind of growing up on a smartphone watching video, but trying to get them to read is very difficult. And so we really kind of want to meet people where they are and also create a new audience, a new channel for authors. I believe they're some of the most creative, impactful people in the world that really have the ability to change lives. And so we just think of ourselves as a new way to consume content. And we do so by, we partner directly with authors. We create video books and, would encourage everyone to kind of try one out and see if it's something that's interesting for them. Video books are about an hour long using a variety of different things. We have an author on screen, interviews with experts, celebrities, animation, data visualization, archive. It's kind of like you're watching, almost like a Netflix documentary, but it's really a book. And we offer it through an all access subscription. And so we now have 28 video books. They're all nonfiction, but they really span everything from, we have the number one book on potty training. We have a book like Radical Candor by Kim Scott, Profit First for entrepreneurs. We actually have a whole category for entrepreneurship and innovation on our platform with, the co-founder of Square, Safi Bakal, who wrote Loonshots, Alan Dibb of One Page Marketing Plan, Mike McCallowicz of Profit First. And honestly, the majority of our content, I think, really caters to that, individual that has a deep desire for self-development, right? Whether it's in their career, personally, professionally, to improve their relationships, health and wellness. And so that's who we cater to. And we really kind of partner with that top authors across all of those categories. And we really pride ourselves in super high quality content. um, people
Yeah,
enjoy.
and I think it's just absolutely brilliant. I mean, I've been a really big consumer of audiobooks over the last decade, and that's something that has just allowed me to tap into a lot more books and content than what I could if I was just reading them, because I do have a hard time carving out time in my day, it feels like, to actually sit down and read. And it's just not my preference in terms of the way that I consume content always. And like you said, video is where a lot of consumption is happening right now, and my audience would really recognize that I'm a big proponent of video in terms of content and communication and so on. And so this is just a beautiful, I think, mashup of all of my interests all into one platform. And so I applaud you for what you guys have created there. In terms of this idea, where did it come from? Was this something that you were of a similar mindset, where it's just like, I want to consume more content, but I just don't like picking up a book as much as maybe watching a TED talk or watching a documentary or watching an interview?
Yeah, that was definitely a part of it. So it was kind of interesting. I worked in a totally different field, enterprise marketing software, for the first 5 or so years of my career, and I was reading a lot of books about developing, personally, professionally, things like high output management, radical candor,
Hmm.
influence, right? Things to kind of help me improve in my career. And I was on a flight to Los Angeles with my then CEO, and both of our screens were blank, and I had my AirPods in, and I was listening to Grit by Angela Duckworth, and he was reading Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. And about an hour into the flight, he was like, "Hey, what's going on? How's your book? I can't really focus. I've been stuck on this chapter for over an hour now, and I just can't get past." And I was like, actually not really listening to the audiobook. I was watching Wolverine on the screen in the row in front of me, like between the seats, and reading subtitles. And I love these kinds of books, right? And I love like thinking about how to apply them. So it's not that I wasn't interested in the subject matter. It was just so interesting to me that my eyes were fixated on something else that really caught my attention, right? And so just started a conversation between us. And my former CEO actually had, reading kind of like, it was very difficult for him to read. He was dyslexic, and he couldn't really get through content unless it was really engaging and had that mix of video and audio. And for me, I was like, I really prefer to learn via documentaries and watching, things like TED Talks and learning through YouTube, because I just felt like I remembered the information for so much longer. Like I would read or listen to an audiobook, and 2 weeks later, I'm like, wait, what just happened? Like I totally forget the information that I consumed. And so
Yeah.
started a conversation between us, and we came to the conclusion that like the kinds of books that we were reading that were more prescriptive, kind of driving us to some sort of improvement in our lives. It was kind of crazy that there was no like highly produced audio visual movie like way to consume them.
Hmm.
And so that's really the first idea kind of seeded in my mind. And then it kind of nurtured over time as I met a few at the company. We had authors come in and speak and do fireside chats. And so I met with Dan Ariely actually. And I said, "Hey, why isn't your book Predictably Irrational," which is what the talk was about, in a movie or a documentary type format? And it was just like, I don't know. No one has really approached me from, or my agent about film or TV, because that market very much exists for things like narrative nonfiction, right? So like the story of Steve Jobs or the story of a Golden State murder or the story of Uber, but not so much for prescriptive nonfiction, right? Like anything in marketing, sales, economics, doesn't really have that movie like adaptation interest from Hollywood. And so it was like very interesting. And Dan Ariely is very much a yes person. If it doesn't take much of his time, he's like, yes, like I want to try something new, right? And so he introduced me to his agent, Jim Levine. And now Jim Levine is one of our closest partners. I think we have maybe 30 or 40 partnerships with him, and his roster of authors. And he was, the publishing industry is very unique in that it has adapted and changed to some extent, but not rapidly, right? 80% of book sales, 75% of book sales are still print, right? And so, relatively slow moving industry. And Jim Levine was a bit of an outlier in terms of an agent that was very progressive. Early investor in audiobooks and Audible, and friends of Don Katz. And he represented people like Dan Ariely, Eric Schmidt, Jonah Berger, and so many other really well-known authors. And he was like, this is really interesting, this video book concept of yours. Go figure out how the rights would work and how the content would look. And I will give you some of my best authors to start. And Jonah Berger, our first video book, was a Jim Levine client. And so he was kind of the first agent that believed in me enough and the concept enough to say, if you figure these things out, I will help you get your first kind of author partners. And so that was it. And then, I met Andy around the same time as well. And he had a lot more experience than I did in the industry. I was personally just really passionate about the idea. And I thought there's a huge opportunity and impact this could make if books could reach this kind of broader audience. Cause I just thought there's so many more people that watch things than read things. And, he was the chief content officer at Audible for 8 years. Then he was the chief growth officer at Blinkist. And so he kind of knew this world inside and out. And, myself and Jim were kind of working together to make the first video book happen. And then, see, a lot has changed since that.
Yeah, really cool. I love this story, and like it's just amazing, right? How so many things have to come together to get something like this off the ground, and so it's just the idea comes just from that moment on the airplane, right? And then the ability to connect with that author, and so then it just all starts to come together. What is I know you're VC backed right now, but what is the business model? Can you share that with us so our audience better understands how you're building this business?
Absolutely, yeah. So to consumers, it's an annual subscription, and so there's a 3-day free trial, and then it's $10 a month billed annually, so $120 a year, and you get access to all of our existing content and all the new content that comes out. And it is on our website, LitVideobooks.com, as well as an iPhone app that we just launched very recently. And we're currently adding 2 new video books a month, and then we kind of plan to scale up from there. Everything in prescriptive nonfiction. And to authors, it's a different business model. And so we incentivize them, or basically, in order to get the rights to create the video books, we offer them an advance and a royalty fee on everything that we earn from their books.
Gotcha. And so obviously the bigger the author, the bigger the book, the more that maybe upfront fee is going to be. And then the royalty structure is probably pretty standard then after that.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, honestly, as a startup, we haven't really been, even for some of the top authors, the advances haven't been that great. And part of the reason is we invest so much in production and the creation of the content, and we do that fully in-house, that, authors haven't really requested, because they think of it as, look, this only throughout a whole 3-month process, this takes less than 8 hours of my time, right? And it's a new channel, it's highly produced. It's something that I can use in my own social media for speaking events on my own platform, and it doesn't take away from anything else that I'm doing. And so it's kind of like we've been able to get some really amazing authors, obviously by investing a lot in creating the actual video book. But we haven't really paid any crazy advances, which has been helpful and beneficial for us to be able to scale, right? And get kind of more authors on the platform with, it's a very capitally intensive business. We want to create good content and build it from ground up.
Yeah, I understand the video production costs and what you're creating there, an hour of content, especially when you're talking about a bunch of interviews with people that could be potentially all over the country, right? There's definitely some significant costs that are going into creation of each one of these video books. So now you did mention that this is another channel that is just going to continue to amplify that author's book and their thought leadership position potentially, and so on. So in the early days, now you've got some data that would support that it's not really cannibalizing any of the other sales. But in the early days, was that a bit of a friction point in your discussions with the agent or with some of the authors, just in terms of their fear that this might actually displace some of their or decrease their book sales?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was the main concern that people had. And, I think it's whenever there's something new, you're afraid of whether it's going to eat what you're currently earning, right? You eat into what you're currently earning. And I think the good thing is that before we even launched our first video book, we had the analogy of movies, right? And documentaries. Like when a documentary comes out based on a book, it actually helps the underlying book sales because it's catered to a different, broader audience. And so, and we also made it very clear, hey, we're not going to use the exact text of the book, right? This isn't like an audiobook. And in the publishing industry and in terms of the way the rights work, Audible initially tried to go and get all these audio rights, right? And then eventually publishers were like, well, this is literally just the verbatim text of the book read into a microphone, right? And so like you can't really claim these rights because it's actually our intellectual property, right? And so for us, it really is much more of an adaptation. We don't use any of the text of the book. It's all narrative, documentary style content creation. And so over time, because we really played more in the movie adaptation, documentary adaptation space than we did in like the audio adaptation space, right? Authors and, agents have kind of come around. Now, obviously, it's a very different story, but early on, it was a lot of selling and convincing, and a lot of people said no. And they were like, "Hey, let's just wait until this thing is out there and we see some, we see some data and excitement."
Yeah. So now, in terms of the business model, in the early days, when you only have your first, book or your first handful of books that you've published, that becomes very difficult to sell in terms of like to the consumer because there's only a few. Now that you have a much larger library and that library is growing at 2 new books per month, that value proposition for that subscription fee is a lot better today, and is every month is getting better and better. How do you, as a startup business, grow kind of both sides of that, the supply, but then also the demand in a situation when you don't really have the supply and the authors really probably in the early days or have that wait and see approach, and then also the concerns about the cannibalizing and so on. And so it's kind of like, well, I don't know, there isn't much of an audience there, I'm not going to get much out of this, is it worth my time even for the 8 hours it might take me to even sit down and have this interview with you? So how do you do that as a business, balance that out and try to build both sides of the market at the exact same time?
Yeah. So, on the supply side, and in terms of authors, we're actually way further ahead in kind of partnerships and how many partnerships we have versus titles that are live. There's just been so much interest amongst authors. And actually, the first few video books were obviously partnerships with Jim Levine and his clients. And since then, it has, primarily, I would say we've grown through referrals and through word of mouth amongst our authors. Because for us, like the most important thing is we want not just consumers to be excited about and like the content, but we really want authors to be happy with their video book, right? And so our authors have really been our biggest referral source in terms of getting new authors. When they see their video book, they're like, wow, this is I never thought I would see my book in this format. This is awesome. They'll be like, hey, like I actually have a couple of friends that saw this and they're interested. Can I introduce you? Right. And so we've really been able to grow kind of our own organic author network, which has helped us a lot in terms of expanding on the supply side. And so we actually have more titles signed now than we can produce through halfway through 2024.
Wow.
So, but we're always looking for more and better, not better, but more partnerships to kind of have on board. And really, Andy on our team spearheads that. He's done a lot of this through his time at Audible, and he has really great relationships with a lot of different agents. And I think our production team is really the reason, and the consumer response is the reason that authors continue to want to kind of partner with us. And then on the demand side, we launched our all access subscription. We were selling these things individually until early July of this year. And, we saw some really good signs, right, that got us excited to do the subscription offering. We had over 35,000 people with unique accounts on the platform. And on average, they had more than 2.5 video books in their library. And at that point, we had, probably 15 or 16 video books live. And so, and the finish rates maintained really high. And so we were really seeing like people come in for one, maybe from an author sharing or some of our ads, they come in and purchase additional ones. And that got us excited enough to say, okay, look, like people want more of this content. And it makes sense to kind of see how a subscription offering would work. Right. And so, I think, with a subscription offering, there's kind of always the chicken and the egg problem, right? Where it's like, there's a certain amount of content that you have and you're growing that content, but at what point do you have the right mass to reach a certain type of audience, right? It's almost like a pyramid going the other way where it's like, you add 2 more video books a month versus 4 or 6 or 10. How greatly does that kind of maximize and augment the audience that you can tap into, right? And so we've seen really great results with our subscription so far. Growing high double digits every month in terms of new subscribers, and people will just absolutely love the content, right? 5-star ratings across the board and in our app. And I think what we've learned actually is that we have a 3-day free trial, and about 80% of people that start a free trial convert into paid subscribers,
Which is high.
It's very high compared to benchmarks. It's also early, right? And so like these are more of our like super fans, right? In the subscription, I would say. So who knows how that'll change over time. But what we do is every single time someone cancels, right, we ask them why. And it almost always is there's not enough content, right? And it's not that I didn't like the format. It's that I didn't find a book that I like on here, or I wish there was more to warrant the fee, right? And so for us as a business, that's great because we're like, okay, great. Then we just need to, get more titles and add more titles to the catalog, right? And I think there's no kind of magic number really on the content side. This modality is very different in terms of consumption than a Netflix, right? Because it is learning content, right? We don't really see people binging through dozens of video books on a weekend, right? What we're seeing is about, a video book completed every 2 weeks on average right now, right? And so our top kind of cohort of customers are doing about 2 to 3 video books on a monthly basis, which is it's pretty good in terms of book consumption, right? The median book consumption is way, way lower in the US for physical books and audiobooks. And so, I think we're still learning, honestly, what the right kind of content size is to be able to scale up. But I think our current pace really allows us to grow at a significant clip efficiently, which is important in this market, right? And so we're always keeping an eye on it. And, I could see the platform getting to probably 2x the number of books we have today next year, and then maybe 2x or more the year after that. It just depends on the balance between exactly what you were saying, right? Supply and the demand and the commensurate investment in new production.
Yeah. And so I'm also curious because you talked a little bit about it. The beginning model was a individual per video book cost fee. And then you have now switched over to the unlimited subscription model. And we see, some of the using Netflix as an example. I mean, that's exactly where they were at to begin with, and where they were at until just recently. Now they've added this ad platform,
Ads, yep.
Tier to their model as well. Is that something that you have looked at? Was that something that you were looking at early on? or is it something where it's like, no, we definitely don't want to go down that road, never considered that?
You know, we're never closed to new ideas and new ways to monetize. The nice thing about our format is we have global rights in all languages, all territories. And so if we wanted, and we can monetize how we want, right? Through a subscription, through a credit-based system, through an ad-supported model on a third party, if we wanted to. And so we've created the business so that we can monetize the content how we please. We have experimented with like a little bit of third party licensing where we'll take a select portion of our catalog and put it on other platforms to help gain brand awareness, right? Kind of like how Masterclass has a couple of masterclasses on Delta, right? If you fly, just people can kind of become more aware of it. I think we're definitely open to that. I think also the answer is not no to ads. I think it depends on when and where and to what audience. And so, you know, Hulu has kind of been an ad premium ad model for a really long time. There's also free ad supported versions of, you know, many media companies and streaming companies. And I always kind of try to come back to the mission of the company, which is the more people that have access to this, the better it could help them improve their lives in some capacity. Right. And so I could see a world in which in a country or a city that there is less access to capital, less access to technology, we have a free ad supported version. And we only monetize that way, right? And we have different localized pricing for different regions, then maybe even like a student plan that could have advertising that's much cheaper than right now it's 120 a year, but the price will go up, right? As our catalog increases. And so yeah. I think we are definitely open to it. And there's also kind of like, on TED Talks, you'll see it sponsored by usually Rolex or Deloitte, right? And so, I think that is also a model that is something that we would consider. But I think right now, the enemy of all companies and startups is lack of focus, right? And there's so many things that we can constantly be doing. And so for us right now, what we're really focused on is creating great content, making our authors really happy and growing our subscription product. But we have lots of ideas for other ways to monetize and even internationalize.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're exactly right. I mean, the biggest challenge that we all have is that focus piece and really making sure that the ultimate goals that we have set out are really driving our day-to-day activities. And so, and I imagine, like you were saying, your biggest reason for people leaving the platform is because there just maybe isn't enough content for them. And so it's all about right now, you guys must be pushing hard into the production part of it, trying to scale that up as much as you can. In that vein, what is the, the way that you evaluate what books that you want to convert? How do you pick what is the next, 100 books that you're going to be focused on over the next few months here?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a mix of art and science, and data science in particular. And so, initially when we started the company, we were saying, okay, we want an evergreen book, right? This isn't a book that just sold well in 1 year and then kind of disappeared in year two, like most books do, right? We want a book that has consistent sales, consistent interest and demand, and is kind of like one of those canonical books that is the top 50 book in a certain category, right? We want the best in small business. We want the best in entrepreneurship. We want the best of, the top categories amongst nonfiction, right? I think that is very much still part of our strategy. And, it's kind of what we're thinking about at a baseline, what you'll see throughout the next year is these are some of the best books in health and wellness or psychology or economics or finance or investing, right? And that's a very important core. But what we also do is we experiment with new categories, right? That are outside of the traditional kind of business self-development. We have our first potty training book we launched last year or earlier this year. We launched a parenting book called Limitless Mind. We're doing a health and wellness book about the benefits of plant-based eating that's coming out in January called How Not to Die, right? And then we're doing a lot of books that are kind of they're relevant to somebody that has a desire to improve themselves, but they're not exactly what you would define as like a traditional business book, right? And so we're experimenting with new categories, and I think there's a moment in time where our audience grows large enough where we can become tastemakers rather than curators, right? Because right now I think we're curators. We're saying we can pick, we know who all the best-selling authors are. We know that their content is evergreen. We know that there's continuing demand that'll probably be a good book for us, right? In addition to that, we have our production team evaluate to say, hey, this book, is going to be easy to produce in terms of, like traditional relative to our other content pieces, or really difficult, right? Like everyone in the book is no longer alive, or, we can't get access to any archive, right? There's like challenges that come with each title. And so we evaluate it from a production perspective too, before we put it into the production queue, right? But what we're also trying to do is like, we're trying to create a platform, not just for best-selling authors to reach a broader base, because that selfishly helps us too, right? Like their audiences, when they share on social media, then become lit fans, right? But we're also trying to be tastemakers, up and coming authors that may not have as large of an audience, but our team has evaluated and said this book is really good and our customers will love it. We create those books as well and launch them on our platform, right? And so it's a little bit of a mix of both. We want the baseline, the top 100s, right? Because those are going to have demand for a really long time, like Influence by Robert Cialdini, How to Talk to Anyone, right? Those classic books. But then, some of those books like Connect, right? That did pretty well, but not insanely well in the book market, are doing incredibly well on our platform because they talk about a really important topic that's hard to discuss, right? Which is building relationships and how to have hard conversations. And so we're surprised sometimes by what works really well in video that may not necessarily work so well in book format or as well. So the short answer to that is we're learning. And I think the medium answer is like baseline of the top best-selling books, and we're constantly thinking about new categories and new authors that may be mid-list or up and coming to have on our platform as well.
Yeah, very interesting and very nuanced, right? And so, like you said, it's all a matter of looking at that data and trying to learn as you're going along. What is the biggest challenges that you think you're going to face that you're going to have to overcome, and how are you going to overcome them? That you're going to face over the next, say, 12 months of your business's growth?
Yeah, I would say it kind of centers around a theme that we mentioned before, which is lack of focus, and or ability to focus on something and really execute. I just think there's so many different ways that we can monetize, so many different authors we can work with, so many different ways of production can go, right? And so many markets we could theoretically expand into. I think really having a clear focus on what our most important metrics are, and really kind of tying that to the mission, I think is going to be really important. I would say really the challenging part that it took a long time to scale to a point where we could do 2 video books a month, really efficiently. With basically, we haven't had a delay and we've been on budget for, the last 6 months, right? But it took time to build that, right? Because you're creating 2 hours of fresh new content a month, but the production process is 3 to 4 months out, right? And so every day we have 8 books that we're looking at for the next 4 months, right? And so for us, it's really thinking about how do we double that on a monthly basis? How do we triple that and do it efficiently? I think we very much have an ethos at the company of we hire to have people really execute and deliver a lot, right? We're not the kind of company, like we still only have 9 full-time employees, right? And a lot of our production team is kind of spread throughout the world, but we are very much, we don't want to have hundreds of people that are kind of just managing, right? We try to be really efficient per employee. And so that ethos kind of carries into all parts of our business, right? Marketing, product growth, production as well. And so thinking about how to scale that production piece, I think is probably in the midterm, the most difficult part of the business, especially while maintaining quality, increasing speed, and not having people go crazy on the team.
Yeah, I was anticipating that the production side was going to be probably the answer there, but just knowing that side of the business from what it is that we do on the video production, because yeah, the scalability of that is going to be the key to your success and getting the volume, and that's where everything really hinges around that. So that's no surprise to me. I'm curious, from the early days, a couple of years ago when you first started to produce the books to where you're at now, what's easier today for your business than what it was in those early days?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say production. There's an actual process now, right? Before video books didn't exist, right? And so we kind of had to create the first one, and then we figured out what parts work and don't work with consumers, and then we've kind of built processes around each part of it, right? There's a very built out process now for pre-production, analyzing a book, thinking about how to create the actual interview with the author to be really compelling, and then animation and all the different parts now have like very detailed processes, and they've been done dozens of times. And it's just that repetition just means every new batch we become faster, more efficient, less mistakes, right? And we've actually, one of our big keys to success on the production side has been there's been zero attrition on our production team, which is very different than the traditional production world, right? You're working on a gig and then you're going to another gig, right? There's not much loyalty to an individual company. And so we've had no one leave. And we've just kind of been adding more people into that same group, but it helps a lot because it's a very specific style that changes with every book, but it's a very unique way to create content. And the more we've had people do it multiple times, that experience and expertise really helps us go faster. And it's pivotal, especially as we kind of look at doubling and tripling our monthly releases, because those people now become leaders and coaches, right, to the new people that are going to be animating and writing scripts and all of those things. So I think process is absolutely pivotal after we figured out content that was really engaging and it worked. I think that's been a huge key. And then I think another thing is just we've always tested a lot. It's kind of been a core part of the company. And we'll test pricing. We have no assumptions, right? We like to test things that might be crazy. Test a new piece of content that is totally different than something that we have normally produced, right? Like no one would have thought we would do a potty training book, but we did it. And so I think we constantly have we always have this viewpoint that we know some things, but we don't know way more, right? And I think that's really important and crucial kind of for the company. And it just, everyone has this ability to adapt as a result, right?
Yeah. So now I would imagine that when you were first looking at some of the potential authors and books that you wanted to build a video around, you must have looked at your own bookshelf, right? And went, okay, these are some of my favorites. I think I'd really like to see this come to life. What are, I guess, the ones, knowing our audience are all entrepreneurs, that you would recommend? Which are your favorites in the library, if you could pick a few of them yourself right now for us?
Ooh. So, I mean, I really do enjoy almost all of our video books. I will say my personal favorite as an entrepreneur, well, there's a couple. So I'll say my top three.
Okay.
Loon Shots by Safi Bakal, I thought was really, really fun. We interviewed Ed Catmull, founder of Pixar. We interviewed the founder of Moderna, Bob Langer. We interviewed the creator of the iPod, John Rubinstein. It was just such interesting stories that you hear in that one of crazy innovations that have changed the world, right? And how to create that kind of culture in your company or organization. So that was a really good one. I would say Radical Candor. That honestly, that book has been something I go back to every year, because it's not just a great way to manage and lead. It's a great way to build relationships. And so we just launched that one. It's been one of our top video books since launch, every single week. And, it's a really good one. Kim Scott is just wonderful. And then I would say Trillion Dollar Coach is another one by Eric Schmidt. I mean, other than the fact that he's built, one of the most successful companies in history, it's just very intimate. We're telling the story in memoriam of Bill Campbell, who was just a legendary coach and a really nice person. And you hear stories from some incredible people. Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Alphabet, is in that video book, right? And you just hear so many things about building a team and creating the right culture. Then I would say one last one, Exactly What to Say by Phil Jones, is great because it teaches you the right way to think about communication, being really succinct, knowing the right things to say, and being really deliberate about what you're saying and how you say it. I mean, I could go on. There's a lot that are on there. So.
Which is absolutely fantastic. I love this list. And so this is definitely going to give all of our viewers the top 4 that they need to go and check out immediately for it. So this is another kind of follow-up question to that is all of these incredible interviews that you have the privilege of conducting as part of the production of these. Who, I mean, obviously we're all fanboys to certain individuals that we've, either been reading or following, who we really admire out there. Out of everybody that you've interviewed for all these different books, who are the ones where, you just couldn't believe it? You had to pinch yourself to confirm that this was actually happening, that this was real.
Oh man. I mean, Sundar Pichai was definitely one. Yeah. Ed Catmull was another one. I absolutely love Pixar. Ben Horowitz was another one, was in Unapologetically Ambitious. Man, I mean, it really, I would say those are probably the top 3. Yeah, we get to be the CEO of TaskRabbit. And, I mean, there's so many different ones. It's hard to say. I mean, part of it is the authors network. And then the other part of it is like our team is a documentary team to some extent. Right. And so they're used to kind of chasing people to do interviews. And sometimes you just get surprised. Like, I can't believe this person said yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Really
you always have to ask.
Completely. Okay, so the last question I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to let you go because I know you're a busy guy. You have some videos to create here. So when it comes to the journey that you have been on, if you could send a letter back in time to the younger Ronak who was just starting the business, so a little over 2 years ago, what would you put in that letter?
It's a really good question. I think something that Sundar Pichai talks about a lot is probably what I would have kind of sent in this letter, which is, balance is one of the most important things in life. And I don't really believe in work-life balance. I think there's a lot of different things that you have to balance, right? And I think it's very easy when you're an entrepreneur to 24/7, all you think and you do and you breathe is your business, right? And that's great. But it can very much lead to burnout. And what I realized is much so over time, only recently it really is, everything contributes to your success as an entrepreneur. Your ability to be able to take an hour out of your day to work out, spend time with your loved ones, communicate with your family and take time out for your friends, that all contributes to your success and your ability to be even-headed and intelligent always as an entrepreneur. And so I think it's not really talked about as much because, as a founder, you're always working, right? Like, it's funny. Someone told me the other day that they started a new company and their CEO, who had just started a month before, went on vacation all of December and is not responding to any emails. Right. And I was like, that is insane, because I can't imagine doing that ever. And it's not that I'm disrespectful to my partner or anyone when we're going on vacation. I like to turn off as much as I can, but it's just like, there's something different when you have something that you've built of your own, right? Yeah. That it's impossible to turn off. But I think it's because of that, it's very important to say it's okay to have partitions in your life for different things that lead to your health, that lead to your emotional wealth, which is, your friends and your family and your partner. And, early on, all I did was work. I didn't see friends for, I can't even remember how long. For, the first time I was fundraising, like I didn't talk to anyone. All I was doing was working 24/7. Right. And I was just like, so many more white hairs after that initial period. And I just think it's something that I wish I had known earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really difficult to find that, especially in the early days, right? And I don't know, like, this is the thing is that even if you would have written yourself that letter and you read it back then, how do you implement it? How do you actually
Yeah,
apply that it's difficult without having lived through it, right?
absolutely. Yeah, no, I don't know what I would have done with it, but I probably would have thought like, oh, this is some other annoying person trying to give me advice. Right.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Ronak. I really appreciate you sharing your journey and sharing, just everything about the business that you have created here. I think it's just such a unique and powerful way for people to consume just some really interesting topics. And, these are books that are going to have potentially profound impacts on their businesses as entrepreneurs. And so I know our audience is really appreciative of what you've shared with us today and what you've built in terms of Lit Video Books. So thank you so much for that. If I could ask, is there if somebody wanted to reach out to you, what would be the best way of connecting with you or finding out more about Lit Video Books?
Yeah, shoot me an email. I respond to pretty much everything that's not spam. Ronak at litvideobooks.com.
Yeah, so Ronak, this is just such an incredible platform that you're developing, this whole new channel. I know our audience are going to be really excited to check this out. And I think you have a little extra special giveaway here. So you want to share that with our audience?
Absolutely. Yeah. So thanks again for having me. Anyone that wants to try out Lit Video Books will offer an extra 50% off the first year. You just have to use code Amplify when you go to litvideobooks.com. So hopefully you guys are able to check out some content.
Oh, that is so fantastic. So, I mean, you're talking about a subscription that is all obviously already extremely affordable when you talk about the number of books that are available and how the audience or sorry, the library is just growing and growing. To get 50% off that for a whole year, that's an incredible value. So I definitely encourage our audience to take advantage of that. We also have another announcement, and that is with regard to Profit First, a book that is authored by Mike Mikowicz. He has this best-selling book that's been out for a little bit. You guys have created a video book about it as well. That's going to be given away at an event that's coming up that's called BX, which is actually a networking event here in the city of Edmonton. So it's a whole new business networking group that has expanded into Canada, and they're doing a live event in one of the theaters here. And so you guys have graciously given away a free book as well to Profit First Video Books. So that's really exciting as well. And if you want to check out the code to get to the registration page to get to that, you want to check out the link in the bio of the episode as well as the show notes and on amplifyyourbusiness.ca. So until next time, everybody, enjoy your day, enjoy the books, learn something, and have a prosperous day. And again, thank you so much, Ronak. I really appreciate you coming on the show today.